Dragon of the Southern Tier, here with you, and I am happy to be with you. And it's right after Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone in America has had a great holiday. In fact, regardless of whether or not you're an American, if you had a great time on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you were enjoying time with your family, if you had a warm meal, you were in a safe place, then I hope you had a great day. And that's something I wish for everyone that may be viewing this and everyone who hasn't. If you haven't been here before, this is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. And we do long-form political commentary in a free format here. And on Sundays at 2:30, we do the live stream where you get to call in and speak with us. You can call in at 607-242-1582 and leave your comments. You can also reach us on Facebook and YouTube. We will look and see the comments as they come up. And we got a lot that we're going to talk about today. I know that we just had an American holiday on Thursday, Thanksgiving time, where families gather, even though states this year, states and the country were said to keep everyone away. You couldn't be with your family. You couldn't be with your friends. You could not enjoy this holiday of celebration. Of course, you could go out the day after. In America, there's a tradition. We have Thanksgiving, where everyone comes together and has a meal and gives thanks for being alive and to be free. And then on Friday, it's Black Friday. It is the biggest sales day in the nation, where everyone goes out and every business has a sale on everything going on, and Americans flood the markets. They flood all the stores. And on Thanksgiving this year, because of COVID-19, we were told you could not have more than 10 people in your home. We were told in state after state, we were told that we could not gather with other people for throughout almost the entire year. We have basically been told to be isolated in solitary confinement. And then on Black Friday, we were told to go out to the stores and buy stuff together in large crowds. Now, mind you, this year was nowhere near as large as the crowds that we see traditionally year after year, but there were huge crowds no matter what. And that's incredible. It's terrifying, in fact. And it just tells you the kind of dichotomy and what kind of year 2020 has been, and how confusing the whole process has been. But going into 2021, we're going to be facing a lot of issues that came from this year and that are going to be compounded by what happened this year. From the economy to society to international politics, it's all going to be on the line. And we're going to talk a little bit about it because having more than a couple of days, having a month to prepare, honestly isn't enough, but it's more than what we had before. And we should take every opportunity because we need to be prepared for what's coming down the line. So these are some of our predictions. And I know everyone will come out with their predictions in the next week or two, but let's be prepared. Let's be ahead of this. And of course, as we go through the various issues, we look forward to seeing your comments on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We look forward to seeing you join us or call in to the show at 607-242-1582. So I'm going to start locally and then I'm going to expand out. Ultimately, we're going to be talking about some of the international issues that are affecting us all. But let's start off locally. There, of course, was the news. We've gotten the results now. We're very sure that in New York State, the Senate, the New York State Senate has been won by the Democratic Party with a supermajority. This news coming out on the 23rd. Now, most people think, well, that's not such a big deal. The election's over. We count the votes. New York is a blue state anyway. Here's the problem. Because New York State is now for the second time in decades, a single party rule. Democrats rule the state assembly and the state senate. That means they get to make every single law. They get to have control of the state government. That means that Governor Cuomo continues to have the ability to be an emperor because his control in 2020 and going forward has been so absolute. He controls the Democratic Party in the state, and thus, with them having all the positions of power, he controls the government. And we've seen that has resulted in people being locked in their homes and people, the increase in domestic abuse, the increases in drug abuse. We've seen increases in violent crimes. We've seen over 260 laws have been changed unilaterally by Cuomo by himself, and he continues to maintain unlimited executive power in New York State. This is not a benefit. We've seen over 500,000 people leave the state in this year alone. Over 250,000 people in New York City alone have left the state. Most of those people are middle-class Americans. And that means that a lot of the tax revenue for New York State, which is $61 billion in debt, probably $15 billion in debt just in 2020 alone, these are the economic policies of Governor Cuomo. That means this gets to continue in 2021 without any checks, legal checks, or any kind of limits to his power. This is one of the consequences of the election for the bluest of blue states like New York, like California, several others. Because there is no opposition voice that has the ability to stop these kinds of overreaches of government, we're going to see increased problems. We're going to see more taxes. We're going to see more demands for people to be set in solitary confinement in their own homes. More of these demands that you can't go and meet your own family, but you are expected to go out to various businesses like Walmart to shop and to just congregate with the public. It doesn't make sense. We're going to see more of these spontaneous, what they're calling now yellow zones, or areas of heightened awareness in orange zones, and shutdowns of isolated parts of New York State. This is a problem because we've already heard from the CDC European chief that lockdowns are the single worst resolution and answer to the problem that has been COVID-19. And that this has created more problems than it has resolved. In fact, we're going to go into a couple of them in a second because this is bad. And this is causing people to leave New York State at rates already New York had led for the last 4 or 5 years, has led an exodus. Is a single biggest state where people are running out of, like rats leaving a sinking ship. And then you add in another 500,000 people, I believe it's even higher than that, who have left New York, taken their business with them, shut down forever, and gone away to go somewhere else where it's a lot easier. This is a problem that in 2021 we're going to see. Besides the nation having higher levels of unemployment, but with continued lockdowns or another set of lockdowns for the entire nation, which has been proposed by the Biden administration's COVID chief, and we're looking at the economic issues, this is going to be insane. And this will be a problem that we're all going to feel. And that's going to be unemployment levels that are crazy. And that's going to have an impact on everything else all the way down the line. I'm going to be talking about housing in just a moment and the insanity that's going on there, because we have a big economic problem facing us going forward, and we don't have an answer, but we do have a continuation of that problem. But not only are we seeing that the problem being that the New York State has again become a single party state rulership and leadership. We also see that the Supreme Court has already answered and said that New York State has overreached its constitutional bounds. They can't do what they have been doing. That New York State cannot stop people from being able to celebrate their religious beliefs. Now, a lot of people say, well, obviously, Mike, that's part of the First Amendment. Except that's not what New York State has said. And mind you, the very things I'm mentioning here in New York State are the very things that we're seeing with Governor Whitmer in Michigan. These are the same things we're seeing in Chicago. These are the same things we're seeing with Governor Newsom in California. Chicago is Mayor Lightfoot. And we're seeing throughout all of the major Democratic strongholds throughout the nation. We're seeing a huge impact. And obviously, these are things that, once again, for no reason whatsoever, we're watching at least Facebook, possibly YouTube as well, or Twitter, are blocking us from being able to speak with you. We apologize as we see this happening. But please remember, if you cannot reach us on Facebook, go to our YouTube channel. That should be going fine. And that would be at the No Soundbites Allowed. Just look up No Soundbites Allowed YouTube, and you'll find our channel. Go there. You'll see it live. We are simulcast. So New York State has been one of several states across the nation that has tried, in fact, down in South, even North Carolina, where people were trying to go to church in their cars, locked cars, with windows rolled up, and got $500 fines from the police. I believe it was North Carolina. It might have been Kentucky. And people were going to church in their car with the windows rolled up, and they were getting $500 fines. This is unconstitutional. We see that in New York State and in many other states. People were told you can't have 10, 25% of people who could go to church. That's it. You could not express your religious belief because of the fear of COVID-19, a disease that 98% of the population will survive, a disease that has the highest mortality rate on people who already have the highest mortality rate in the nation. Those who are 65 and older with pre-existing conditions, mostly targeted and centered around those who are 75 and older, which is very scary. And you know, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have concern for our most at risk, but I am saying that it's insane that we have the level of violation of the Constitution that we have seen in 2020 has been unprecedented. We've had governments, state, local governments, try and restrict people's personal freedom in the Fourth Amendment. We've seen them restrict people's ability to express their religious beliefs. These are fundamental issues. We've, of course, seen also things like what we're seeing with Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, where they block people from being even to be able to speak about these things. Another violation of the First Amendment. I mean, these are things that we see more often in the former Soviet Union or current Russia, where we see in China, what we see in North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba. This is where we would expect from those socialist nations. This isn't what you would expect from America. And if America is doing it and we lead democracy around the world, and we do, then we're going to see that followed around the world. The rest of the world, the rest of the democracies in the world will take our lead and say, hey, we should be doing this too. It doesn't make sense. And going into 2021, it's only going to get worse. It doesn't benefit us. You know, there was an article from The Atlantic that came out, and I thought it was very interesting because they were talking about how, well, let me show you the title of it, why big city dominance is a problem for Democrats. And in this, he was going through several of the issues that Democrats are centralized around the major cities of America, and that dominance has allowed them to have more votes, which is a problem because the Democratic Party now is thinking about abolishing the Electoral College, and they're trying to change all the election laws. And this is a problem. And they're doing these things because of what The Atlantic calls the Instagram, what do you call it? The Instagram, where is it? It's a very specific term. Instagram socialism. Instagram socialism, which he calls a crowdsourcing exercise to brand freely, to brand widely appealing ideas in their most emotional and viral, and therefore most radical fashion. Wow, that's an interesting statement. And The Atlantic is a left-leaning publication, so it's a little surprising to see him say that. But he points out in this article that defunding the police, open borders, and socialism, that they're not popular issues. And to quote Representative Vicente Gonzalez from Texas, a Democrat, and he's mentioning that this is destroying the Democratic Party outside of the major cities. This is the thing that you see on Instagram pushed huge, but it's not the America. In fact, in this Atlantic article, they mentioned that the average voter in general, in the general election, is a moderate 50-year-old woman without a 4-year college degree who stays away from partisan ideas and follows politics only occasionally. And I can tell you, in my experience, both at going to events like CPAC and which is a national event, the conservative convention, or you can look at my stats, the data I've seen over the last 15 years in doing this, women aren't the biggest group. Now, that's not to say women aren't focused on this, but they're not the biggest group, percentage-wise, that are actually following politics on a daily basis. And the older they are, they get more. A 50-year-old is definitely more interested than someone who's in their 20s or 30s, but a woman is nowhere near as much as men are for some reason. It's just not, it's not riveting news. I mean, most people today are talking about whether or not Mike Tyson should have won in his fight yesterday, rather than talking about what we're talking about right now. Many people are watching football right now, or actually less people watching football this year than ever before. But some people are watching football at this very moment, rather than some of the issues we're talking about right now. So I find that to be of interest because even the Democrats identify that the city-centric basis of the Democratic Party is at risk and is a problem. Now, I disagree with The Atlantic on why it's a problem. It's not a problem because people are leaving the major cities like rats from a sinking ship again, because of the economic problems that are being brought on because of the COVID resolutions and ideas that had been brought on by the Democratic Party. Isolation at all costs. Don't leave your home. Shut down businesses and jobs. Many Democrats have suggested that we just need to pay people. It was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez promising that we should just pay everyone to stay at home. Don't go out. And that's just ridiculous. Because that destroys the economy. That destroys our social fabric. Now, The Atlantic is worried because, that's going to sound great to Democrats who are on Instagram and using social media and using these emotional viral messages to each other in their little bubble. It's going to sound great to them. And it'll sound great to the news media who are also in these fewer and smaller cities, major cities across the nation, and they get to be in that bubble, and they have a bubble inside that bubble, talking amongst themselves, and it sounds like it's great. But they're forgetting that the reality is, not only is it going to affect them politically because there's fewer and fewer people like that, the problem is this isn't healthy for a nation. It isn't healthy for the nation, especially once you get away from the cities. There is the rest of the nation. New York State is not New York City. Many people think of it that way throughout the entire world, but we all forget, or many people forget, there is an upstate New York. And unlike New York City, upstate New York has entirely different beliefs and ideas and desires. The criminal reform of 2020 has not helped upstate New York. The COVID restrictions have not helped upstate New York. Upstate New York is a generally center-right environment, with New York City being this big, huge blue dot that controls the rest of the state. And we see that in many places across the country. In fact, in the Atlantic article, he mentions things like that California would probably be center-ish, center-left, maybe just a very centrist state if it weren't for LA and San Francisco, which drive the entire state into the deep blue because of the number of people they have there. Plus, he leaves out also the influence of a bunch of illegal aliens. But we have to understand, that's why there are so many problems we see. And that's why there's so many problems like the violations of our Constitution in Michigan, where it's already been ruled unconstitutional, the many things that Governor Whitmer has done that have led to the death of thousands. It's estimated somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 Americans in nursing homes in that state alone, not counting any other deaths that may have been caused by her unconstitutional actions. And in New York State, well, Governor Cuomo, we know he's killed at least 12,000 Americans from New York State in the nursing homes throughout the COVID crisis, not counting all the other deaths that are accountable because of the loss of jobs, because of domestic abuse, because of alcohol addiction, because of suicide, that have come from not just the COVID reaction, but also the policies that have been destroying families and homes. So you might say to yourself, well, Mike, what about we had to take care of the riots? This wasn't just about Orange Man bad. Going into 2021, we've got a lot of concerns out there. We had riots that were going on. It's not just COVID-19 that we have to deal with. We have to deal with all the riots that have been happening. Well, I saw something real interesting on that. A buddy of mine, Jazz Shaw, great writer, writes with hotair.com, made a tweet on the 28th, yesterday. When do the conservative riots start? Nobody has texted me any secret locations or firebomb pickup locations. Am I out of the club? And that kind of goes to what we're talking about here. Everyone's been so concerned. And I hear so many people who are saying, well, there's, we had to take care of the riots. And we were afraid of conservative riots. Why? Conservatives don't riot. We've heard, we have to be worried about all the Proud Boys and the far right. They're such Nazi, they're such fascists. There's certain words I can't say before YouTube and all the rest of them would shut me down. And there's the example right there. The right is such a group of fascists. They're so horrible. They're violent people. Except the Proud Boys don't go out and start riots. They have been in riots as a reaction to Antifa, but they don't actually go out and riot. But Antifa does. Black Lives Matter does. We see the far right isn't engaging in censorship, but Facebook, Twitter, Google, and YouTube, they are. They're going in front of Congress as we speak about the censorship that they are doing. And we've heard from several Democrats, including Senator Blumenthal and Senator Leahy, who've said we need to increase the amount of censorship we need in 2021. They want more conservatives to be censored, to have their voices silenced, to destroy the First Amendment. That's a bit scary. That's a bit terrifying. Meanwhile, again, the right is being blamed for these things. The right is being accused that we were going to start riots, that we were dangerous. But we can go through an entire list. And 2020 was a great eye-opening event for a lot of people, or it should have been, that when we look at the left, especially the far left, which has the biggest voice, the progressive Democrats, the Democratic Socialists of America, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, the entire squad. When we look at these progressives, what we see are more and more violent groups. I was recently mentioning, 2 weeks ago, when we saw that the Democratic Socialists of America in Ithaca started a riot. They tried to start a riot. They started fighting people in Ithaca because they didn't like the voice that other people had, and wanted to silence them because they didn't like the way they thought. They didn't like the way they were speaking. We highlighted that for you. There was also the comment from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about creating lists of individuals whose political preferences didn't match hers. People that if you voted for Trump, if you supported President Trump, that your name should be on a list. And we have identified groups like the Trump Accountability Project, which has a list of individuals that who knows what's going to happen with that. But if history is correct, those lists always result in the very worst acts against humanity. I know some people may be saying, oh my God, Mike, you're just picking on them. These are the problems going into 2021, and they are coming from the left. The furthest parts of the left, I don't think they're rank and file people. I do want to make that clear. There is a big difference between your neighbor who's a Democrat and the Democratic Socialists of America, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the progressives, the BLM, the Antifa. There is a difference. And it's a scary difference because all of those groups I just mentioned, put them all together and you maybe get what? 7-10% of all of the Democrats? Not even all of America. That's of the Democrats. They are an absolute minority in this nation, but they make up a majority of the internet media. They make up a large and growing portion of the news media, which is already left-leaning, and they are certainly a growing portion of our Democratic politicians. And that should terrify you, especially when they are calling for destroying our First Amendment rights, like the right to privacy and our right to free speech, as Senator Blumenthal and Senator Leahy have clearly identified. When they're out there trying to destroy our constitutional right to religious belief and freedom of expression, which is being destroyed, which is our First Amendment right, being destroyed by Governor Cuomo, by Governor Whitmer, Governor Newsom as examples, Mayor Lightfoot as an example. When we're seeing it in, I forget DC's mayor, she's also part of that process. And that's just two things. This is what we're facing in 2021. And folks, I know that, and I'm watching my signal get blocked as we're speaking with over 300% more power than we need to get this signal out to you. And I'm watching it get blocked because we're talking about really serious issues that are very, very important. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm not telling you have to agree. You can reach us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and you can tell us you think we're wrong, that maybe we misunderstand something. Maybe there's benefits that outweigh these negatives that will be affecting us in 2021. But I don't hear them, and I've looked for them, and I don't see them. What I do see is that there are riots that are going on right now. Matter of fact, according to Fox 12 in Oregon on November 4th, and since, we've been hearing about the riots over in Portland, which have continued after the election. And what we have predicted here on the show are going to continue no matter what. You know what? Is my... Yes, the phone's on. Getting messages as we speak. So these are really scary thoughts. We've got riots that are still going on in the nation. We've got isolation being suggested. We're having people who are trying to actively destroy our First Amendment, our Fourth Amendment, not to mention the Supreme Court, where we've heard that Joe Biden is looking to pack the court or to take it away from a lifetime appointment to be able to then have it on a limited term so that they can then rotate the judges off to again take control so that they can reverse these calls to make it constitutional, to deny you the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom, protect your privacy. They want to constitutionalize that. And they can't do it if the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. We're looking at massive changes to our government towards the left-leaning, more socialist and democratic ideals. And yes, some of the Democrats, like in Virginia, there was a recent argument amongst Democrats with Nancy Pelosi saying, no, they're going to stay the course. And Virginia Democrats and many others speaking up very visibly saying, this is destroying our party. We're lucky to win an election this way. America doesn't agree. Americans don't want to be socialists, and they don't want to destroy our Constitution. They don't want to have restrictive freedoms. And I agree. But that's coming from Democrats saying they've gone too far. And when you have states like New York State, which is controlled by a single party that is willing to give all of its power to a single individual who has a proven track record of absolutely horrendous economic policy, absolutely horrendous human rights and support and violating the Second Amendment and just literally destroying the state, driving people out in droves from the state because of his extreme political beliefs. We're talking about Governor Cuomo in particular at this moment, but Governor Newsom is very similar, where he's actually turned off the water that was being supplied to farms and farmers. This is crazy. Governor Newsom decided, Governor Whitmer decided that the public could not buy seeds to grow their own food during the COVID crisis to take care of themselves. These are problems that are bigger than just a very limited time. These are long-term problems with individuals who are governing essentially, it feels like on a whim, changing their mind day by day. Here in New York, we've seen it in New York State, where on any given day, he'll come out with a new regulation, a new decree, putting any number of people in a city, a county, into jeopardy because he decided to, without any change in the science, any changes in law, any changes in those individuals being affected. He does it anyway. And no one has the ability to say anything about it. Awesome Mermaid mentions, I remember that. Couldn't believe they wouldn't allow seed buying. That's right. Yeah, it was incredible. And it was already marked unconstitutional. And yet she is doing it anyway. She has continued to press forward. It's why last week we reported that she is looking, there is a movement to get her impeached. And I wish and hope that we would see the same thing for Governor Cuomo and Governor Newsom and Mayor Lightfoot out in Chicago. And I forget her name, who's in D.C. Amongst several other cities and states, I would suggest that. But those are the big names that everyone remembers. Because these are the problems. And going into 2021, they only get bigger. If you think you're having trouble with the internet now, if you think you're having trouble to get your voice expressed, if, as you remember, there was a poll, I believe it was a YouGov poll about a month ago, that highlighted 62% of Americans feel like they cannot speak, that they can't say what they think on social media, and basically in public as well, because they're afraid of retribution, of people doing something to them. I wish I had thought of it. I would have included the link. We've done it. We've covered this about a month ago on the show before. Imagine how much less people are going to feel like they can speak out unless they have the right way of thinking and the right way to speak, unless they're complying, being forced into submission. Imagine how fewer people are going to be able to speak out and how much harder it's going to be to find that as we see Facebook, Twitter, and Google censor them more and more, either shadow banning or completely deleting accounts at a whim because you're not thinking the right thing. I mean, this sounds Orwellian, doesn't it? It sounds like it's right out of 1984. It absolutely sounds like a Maoist communist ideology right off of the Red Book of the Communists. And it's terrifying. By this way, Awesome Mate, you may be sending me a photo or something on YouTube. I don't get to see that while we're on the show. Oops, let me pop this up. I thought I had that up again. So I'm not able to see that you're sending me, just so you know. But it doesn't end there. That's not the only problem. I wish that's the worst of the things that we had to worry about. But it isn't. It is far worse, because something that no one has really been talking about, and it is starting to be considered right now, is that there are some 11 to 19 million people who are going to lose their homes. In fact, recently CBS has reported it. They estimate that there could be as many as 19 million Americans who are going to lose their homes. That's roughly that's not just people who are not able to pay their rent, which is about 12 million people, but also people losing their homes and mortgages. And I can guarantee you, if you go around your neighborhood right now, especially if you're in a blue state, a state like New York, if you're in Chicago, Detroit, if you're in DC, if you're in California, New Jersey, you look at a lot of these states, and what you're going to see, there are homes by the dozens that are now up for sale that weren't in April. We have seen a massive number of homes going up for sale since April, and we've seen an increase in the number of foreclosures throughout the nation. In fact, the crisis looks to be so bad that we are going to be seeing the Great Recession in 2008, 2009 that devastated the nation, that caused, the economy to go into what was Obama calling the Great Depression. You're looking at it being worse than that, potentially. We're going to possibly lose more people in homes and in rental apartments than that. We have somewhere around 7 million people are considered likely to be so far behind in their rent because of COVID-19 that they can't pay their bill, that on January 1st, when that money is due, they're going to be evicted. And that means you have millions of people who will become homeless. Many of those millions of people don't have a job, again, because of COVID-19, as another consequence of that, which means they can't feed themselves and they can't house themselves and they can't go to work. Where are they going to go? And how many of those families have children? Where are they going to go? This is a long-term problem. This is 2021. It's one of the biggest issues that will be facing us early in 2021, regardless. And mind you, all of these issues don't take into account who is president. It doesn't matter if it's President Trump or if it's Joe Biden, because The result is we still have this same issue. We have this same problem. We still need to resolve this. It doesn't matter who's in that office. Awesome Mermaid mentions, I remember reading a story that some entity was starting to buy up mortgages. Forgot who it was. I know there's been some mention of the Chinese out on the West Coast have been buying property, something they've done for a while. And also Japan has done that. There are other groups that are buying property as well. And I guarantee you, if the market crashes, if we see the housing market crash, if we see millions of people left without homes being evicted, and we see people without work, that the market will crash. All the markets will crash, whether it's real estate or whether it's the stock market. You'll see it come and crash, and we have to react to that. We have to do something about that. And there will be people who will take advantage of that, and they will be buying properties left and right. And what will they do with that? That's a big question. That's a very scary question. But I want to deal with, because I agree with you, Awesome Mermaid. There is an entity doing that, and I do forget, because that came out about a month ago. Only a couple of news outlets actually mentioned that story. Just like, even though CBS has mentioned it, and it's something that's been going on. We've known about this problem with rental and housing for the entire year. We've known about this since at least June. I know we've mentioned it on and off on this program several times. But what we're looking at, and now here we are, it's about to be December, and we still have no answer about what are we going to do about the renting. And there is a bias, a massive bias towards those who are renting as opposed to those who have mortgages. Because people with mortgages, when the business is closed, like in my area where you have Maine's and some other 20% of the businesses have closed. Around the nation, something like 22-23% of businesses have closed forever. They are never opening up their doors, and they are continuing to close even as we speak. Last week, we saw a restaurant in our area called Sharky's, after 40 years of business, closing. It's still happening. We're still seeing businesses fail. And now we're looking at all of the homeowners, whether you're renting or whether you own your home, they can't pay their bills. And, President Trump did make the unprecedented offer and put out there so that no one can be evicted from their home until January 1st. That evictions would not be put through the courts and no one could be taken out of their home. And a lot of people, sadly, who don't pay attention to politics heard that and thought, oh, I don't have to make a payment ever for my home. There's a lot of people who are going out there, they have no idea that they have a bill that's been adding up month after month after month. Tina DeBella mentions that Sharky's was 70 years, a 70-year business. I stand corrected. I thought it was 46. Might have been the age of the owner, the current owner. But let's think about this. So you have upwards of well over 10 million, possibly as much as 20 million people. And some portion of those people, if it's similar to what we've seen in the past, somewhere like 60% of the population may have this confusion that all or part of their rent just disappeared, was absolved. That when the president and the Congress put out the COVID aid, where we got those checks of $1,200 and we were forgiven a lot, that we first put the evictions on hold, people thought, well, that absolved me. And a lot of people spent, as the economy needed, went out and decided to buy things with that $1,200 check, like new TVs, they were buying them like hotcakes. You would have thought it was toilet paper. Except What they didn't do is they didn't pay down on their rent. A lot of people didn't. That's just not what people do when they get free money. When they get free money in every stimulus we have seen, whether it came from Obama or came under the Trump administrations, we've seen people go out and they buy frivolous high-end items. They get the $500 jeans. They get the 40, 60, 70-inch screen TVs. Well, the problem with that is the bill is still there. And by the way, if you haven't taken this into account yet, the $1,200 check we got from the government was not free money. That was in advance. We're paying that back in 2021. We're paying that as part of our 2020 income. That's money that's going to be taxed. It goes back to the government. So, and just like most people may not realize, and most people have thought, that $1,200 check, and even if we get another $1,200 check before the end of the year, which is going through Congress and being debated as we speak, that would mean $2,400 is still due to the government. It's not free money. They didn't just print it up and hand it to you. It's money that has to be paid back. It is not forgivable. That's a problem. And you know what's really interesting to me? We have yet to hear from President-elect Biden a single word about this issue. He has not said what he's going to do about this, because you can't just wave this away. You can't just absolve this, because landlords, homeowners own those properties, and that's their income. For some people, renting out their homes or their businesses is their business. And what are they going to do? If you suddenly just wave a magic wand of President Biden, President-elect Biden, and say, oh, we took Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's idea and we're just waving it away. No one has any of the colleges don't have any debt. The housing doesn't have any debt. You just got it for free. Who's going to pay those people who make their life off of that money? What kind of damage does that does to our economy? How many of these homeowners who are landlords depend on this money not only to feed themselves and their families, but to employ other people like accountants, like handymen, like managers who go out and fix the pipes and keep the buildings in good shape, livable for human beings? What happens to all of those people who suddenly now don't get paid either? Because the rental money didn't come in. So all of the money going down the line, no one gets that either. It's a tricky problem. And it's one of the reasons why I believe the economy is going to be hit. And we need to be prepared. This is a problem for 2021. And people may not be paying attention to now because they want to talk about Mike Tyson or they want to watch the football game. And you will be talking about these things in January. I guarantee it. Whether I have the right answer or not, and I'm not saying I do, this issue is going to be front and center for millions of Americans, and it's going to affect tens of millions of Americans. There may be 11, even if CBS is right, 20 million people that this may hurt. There are 200 million people who will be facing the impact of this because it travels throughout our communities. It travels throughout our businesses. It's going to have a massive impact. And no one really is giving it the attention that it absolutely deserves. Speaking about colleges and talking about the removing college debt, you may recall it was a little over a month ago that we covered and we're talking about the libraries at Binghamton University and throughout the entire nation. Colleges across the nation have been looking for racism in their libraries, and they're purging books. Now, they call it that they're going out and they're making a audit of their books for racist ideology, talking about colonialism, and anything that is basically and anything that BLM would hate, they're going to get rid of, which would be quite a bit. And considering BLM considers everything racist, Antifa considers everything racist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blames everything on racism. Matter of fact, the Democratic Party for decades have blamed everything on racism. So God knows what books might be left available at universities like Binghamton University, but it's getting even worse. Again, everything that I'm speaking about, many of these things in 2020 are problems that have been pre-existing. In 2021, we are literally looking at it getting far, far worse. And that is a realistic outlook. And if you have ideas for this, folks, please, just like Awesome Mermaid and Tina DeBella have mentioned, bring up your thoughts. You let me know. I love the little shocked face here. Yeah, you're scared. It is scary. All of this is scary, but we have to be honest. And if we're not having the conversation ahead of time, then we lose one of the most powerful things that we can do. If we're not talking about it now, if we don't have our members of government working on these issues now, then we won't have a solution as these things come about. And then we're going to be reacting. And you know what? That's how we got the lockdowns. Governor Cuomo locked down the state and destroyed people's lives, not just their businesses, but their lives forever, and led to 500,000 people leaving the state at a minimum because he was constantly just reacting. Oh, we're just going to cut that out, and we just can't do that. Casinos can't open. Gyms can't open. Why? They're open everywhere else. In New York State alone, the state casinos that he advocated for, that he pushed to have created in New York State, the New York State casinos, like Del Lago and this is the other one that's right here, Tioga Downs, they were shut down. Meanwhile, there were Indian reservation casinos that were open since July. We saw that Las Vegas reopened basically in July. We saw Atlantic City in New Jersey opened in July. New York State didn't open up its casinos until September because they were told on October 1st, if they didn't open their doors, they were closed forever. And now they're under limitations again, so that these casinos have to lay off people because of what Cuomo did. These are problems. Tina mentions if they are allowed to take down any statutes, then they should take down all statutes. Oh, statues, excuse me. MLK, Obama, Clinton, all of them. That is another problem. The statues of those of our past heroes, individuals, whether they're Confederates or otherwise. And by the way, if we watch Antifa, BLM, they don't seem to know the difference between W.E. Du Bois. They don't know the difference between George Washington Carver and Robert E. Lee. It's a statue. They topple it. They don't know the difference because it's not about the statues. It's about the destruction. It's about the dominance. It's about having control. And over again, the answer to all of these problems seems to be control. It seems to be that Democrats want power. Why is Governor Cuomo using executive power, ultimate executive power, like an emperor? Because he wants power. It's not because of COVID-19. We could have resolved this. We had things that could have fixed it. And if we're actually thinking about this for a moment, the fact that he wants us to lock down, it didn't work from March until June. Why is it going to work now? Because we did it. In March through June, the nation shut down. People didn't go to work. overwhelmingly, people didn't go to work. Everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone was social distancing. We were told, even at the local level, like County Executive Jason Garnar overreached his constitutional power and told people that you had to be locked in your homes every other day. Absolute home solitary confinement. And that didn't stop COVID. Then why do we think it's going to make it better now? It's a serious question. And I have yet to hear an answer about this. That's not the answer is not isolation. But yet that's what we're hearing as the answer. And it's not just New York. Again, these things are happening across the nation. And we're seeing them take away our rights. And we're seeing this promoted at colleges. Because colleges are in the process, as I was mentioning, of destroying various books. But now it's not just the colleges doing it, because now we hear, and you may have heard about this, Jordan Peterson is in the process of publishing a book. He's using Penguin Books to do the publishing. No big deal. And to put this into context, I want you to understand. Jordan B. Peterson is a Canadian. He is a psychologist out of Canada. He is incredibly well noted for his psychology work. He's a very good professor. Without any questions, up until about 2018, when Canada, and this is, a lot of Americans don't realize, the rest of the world can't do what America does. You can't live like an American anywhere else in the world. You can't. In Canada, a nation that is considered to be one of the most peaceful milquetoast nations in the world, no one really thinks about it. It's all okay. Everything's fine. Canada is just the United States. It's an extension of the U.S. government. It's not. Because in Canada, you can be imprisoned, you can be fined for the way you speak. They have laws against that you can only say certain things. You can't say whatever you want. And that's whether you're talking to someone or whether you're using social media. That's a fact. Freedom of speech doesn't exist in Canada. They can control what you say, and they can punish you for what you say. Jordan Peterson fought against that. He did not agree with the government restricting the ability of a human being to be able to speak. He became famous for that. And his book, which spoke about lifting up people's lives, call it a self-help book. And he became an international star. Very acclaimed. And again, brilliant man. And I like Jordan Peterson. I think he's a brilliant man. I think he has a lot of insight. And he's very well spoken. And the left absolutely hates him because of it. Because he's exercising free speech. He's sharing his thoughts. And people are reacting to it. And rather than becoming more submissive, people are able to be more free. They're not the same thing. You can't be what under Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's thumb and be free. You can't have more censorship like Senator Blumenthal has mentioned he wants to see on the internet and be free. Well, at Penguin Books, they're saying they're going to publish his book, which will come out in March, his second book, 12 Additional Rules to Live Your Life. And the employees at Penguin, some of the employees at Penguin, started to cry. They lost their minds. They couldn't handle the fact that Jordan Peterson wrote a book and that, oh my God, he wrote a book and Penguin Random House, a book publisher, is publishing that book to make a profit. How dare they? How dare they make a book? And these people at this is it just doesn't make sense to me. At Penguin, they decided that their employees decided they were crying, they were in tears, they were devastated, not because they read the book, not because of what the book said, but because the author of the book is Jordan Peterson, and so that brought them to tears. Because Jordan Peterson, according to these individuals, is an absolute racist. And they're terrified. And Penguin cannot do that. Penguin Books should not be publishing racist books. Okay, then let's go to Twitter real quick. As a reminder, Penguin Books also publishes the German Socialist 1940s book. And they have that, and you can buy that now, and they sell it without any problem right now. If you want to tell me that you have a problem with Jordan Peterson writing a book about how to improve your life and how to make yourself better, if you have a problem with him doing that, and you're saying that that's a problem, but you have no problem with a 1940s document that is saying how to destroy some people, if you're not upset with a 1920s book from Russia that is responsible for hundreds of millions of 100 million people being killed, if you're not worried about the red book that came out of China that killed tens of millions of people, if you're not worried about those books being republished and sent out around the world, how can you be upset about a self-help book from Jordan Peterson in Canada? I mean, seriously, folks, let's think about that. That is insane. That is stupid. That is the worst thing. People are crying because a guy says you can help yourself. It's a book you're not required to read. It's a book that you don't have to do anything about. If you don't want to read it, don't. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. You don't have to look at this author at all. But they, at the same time, have nothing to say about the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. They have nothing to do with the German Socialist Nationalist book that was printed in the 1940s, the Red Book by Mao in Communist China, books that have been responsible for hundreds of millions of people being killed around the world. And they are perfectly fine with those books being distributed and being put into colleges. Because guess what? At Binghamton University, they're not worried about the Communist Manifesto. They're not trying to stop people from reading that. But they have a problem with Jordan Peterson. Does that make any sense to anyone? Can anyone, and I hope there's someone who is on the left, and I know members of the Democratic Party, locally and beyond, watch this program. I know members of Antifa and BLM watch this program from time to time. I know there are people out there. I would love to say, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez does. She may or may not. But other Democratic socialists are watching this right now. Please explain to me why Jordan Peterson's self-help book is a problem, but the Communist Manifesto, the Red Book of China, are not. Please explain that. Because communism has killed more people than World War II and World War I combined. Communism and socialism has killed more people around the world than anything else other than religion. And you'd have to go back to, the beginning of written word for that. But socialism is the biggest problem in government in the modern world, killing hundreds of millions of people because of it. Jordan Peterson's helped the lives of thousands, possibly million people, but realistically thousands and maybe tens of thousands of people who have read his books and lived a better life. How terrifying is that? How horrible is that? That's where this is the illogic of the progressive movement of the far left. That they want to silence people even when those people are helping someone. Okay? I mean, we saw that when we heard all of the Democrats say that you shouldn't use that when this vaccine becomes available, because it was created under President Trump, it's a bad idea. And you should wait for a vaccine that comes under a Biden administration. Is that stupid? How many people are you looking to hurt just because of your political preference? And that's the same thing that's happening at Penguin Books. At the end of the day, what they're saying is we would rather people live in misery than read this book, because Jordan Peterson has the wrong political ideology for them. They don't like his political ideology. So they would rather have millions of people potentially be living in misery than read that book because of the author's political ideology. Is that not? Tell me, when you think about that, when someone tells you that, when you think about it in the way that it is, not the way that they want to tell you about it, not to say, oh, well, they were crying and they were upset. And well, what are they upset about? What were they crying? The workers, what were they crying about? They were crying about somebody trying to help another human being. Who supports that? They want to block someone from being able to help millions of people live a better, happier life without taking away anything from anyone else. Let me throw that in there, because I know communism promises and socialism promises that you're going to live a better life, even though you don't. And it is a fact across the face of the earth, historically and currently, that socialism has never made anyone's life better. Go ask someone who from Peru 30 years ago or more, when they were under a communist regime, ask them what they thought about it. Go to Venezuela right now and ask people who are starving to death there and being killed by their own government, ask them about it. Go to North Korea, go to China, go to Russia, ask them about it. No, it hasn't helped anyone. But I guarantee you, you can go out right now and you will find thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who have read the books by Jordan Peterson and have improved their lives and made their lives better, and it didn't affect anyone else in the world. It's a self-help book. It doesn't take away from your ability at Penguin or in Antifa or anywhere else in the far left. It does not stop them from living their lives and having whatever political beliefs they want if someone else read the book and has a better life. But according to the far left, you can't have a better life and not do what they say. It defeats their world belief, their ideology. The way they live demands that you must submit. And that's the only thing that will make life better. And that should terrify you, because in 2020, that's what we're looking at around the world and in the United States. They want more censorship. They want more people to comply, and they want you to do what they say and not be free and not be an individual. I mean, look at the Progressive Party in the Democratic Party right now. I'm not Michael Vasquez. I'm not Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. I am a older black straight male. I have groups. I am a bunch of groups. I'm not an individual. That should terrify you. That is horrible. That destroys your freedom and your rights and your ability to live your life. You're not a bunch of categories, but that's what they want you to be. And that's why they don't want you to read the book. And I'm not telling you, go out and read George Peterson's book. I'm not telling you that. You don't have to. It's called freedom. You don't have to read his book if you don't want to. And that's perfectly okay. That doesn't mean you get to stop him from publishing the book. It doesn't mean that you have to label him as a racist for a book you have not read, that is not available to be read, and say, well, he's a racist and therefore you can't print it, as you have already been publishing racist books anyway. Penguin is already publishing those racist books. And they want to turn around and say, hey, we shouldn't publish this in this other book that has helped thousands of people because someone else, some snowflake, is crying. I don't know, folks. I mean, am I misunderstanding this? Am I not getting this? Does this make sense to you? Because I really, really want to understand this. I really do. It makes no sense to me. And again, this is a problem that we're looking at that's facing us around the world in 2021. The increase in the restrictions on our freedom, of free speech, in the books that we're able to read, whether at a college or in our homes. Homes that we're being told that we have to be locked in, and that is one of the biggest problems. In fact, that kind of brings me, and by the way, I was mentioning earlier that there were riots and protests, and I wanted to make sure people knew it's not just in Portland, by the way, and I forgot to mention this. It's also in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're seeing this throughout the nation. So it's not just in the one Portland or just in Seattle. It's happening in your neighborhoods too. It's in rural America. It's in the smaller cities as well. This is happening, and it is a problem. But I was speaking about one of the problems we have. One of the biggest problems is, of course, COVID-19. And COVID-19 is probably the biggest thing that people are immediately thinking about for 2021, and that's going to have a problem. We've already talked about some state issues. We've talked about it somewhat internationally, but something about 2021 is going to be, how are we going to address the COVID crisis? Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's as bad as some people say it is or not, people say, how are you going to address this? Well, I can tell you that we should remember that Joe Biden, who apparently looks to be being the president-elect, which is still under dispute and may or may not happen. There are some legal cases and issues that have to be addressed with the voting and mail-in votes, which we knew would be a problem, and it's turned our election system into a hellscape. But Joe Biden said, and I am quoting him here, quote, "I would be prepared to do whatever it takes to save lives, because we cannot get the country moving until we control the virus." He continued to say, when asked if he would shut down America, his answer was, "I would shut it down. I would listen to the scientists." By the way, scientists have said conclusively, or at least some scientists have said conclusively, including from the CDC and the WHO, have said, don't do any lockdowns. That's not going to save any lives. Because, we already know what happens with a lockdown. Domestic abuse skyrockets. We know that drug addiction skyrockets. Suicides skyrocket. Unemployment skyrockets. COVID, really, it doesn't stop COVID. It flattens the curve, but it doesn't stop it. But he says he's going to shut down the government. And this is coming from, and by the way, I didn't just make this up. This is not from a meme. This is from Reuters doing a fact check on what Biden had to say in October 21st. Reuters doing a fact check confirms that, yes, Joe Biden did say that he would shut down the government, depending on what scientists would say. And that's important because one of the advisors to Joe Biden, one of his COVID-19 advisors, Dr. Michael Osterholm, has suggested that we should see a lockdown of between 4 to 6 weeks. This comes from CNBC. Again, this isn't a meme. This isn't coming from the left. The right. It's not coming from Fox News. This is from CNBC, from the left. And they admit this. So Biden has said that he is willing to lock down the country. And we know that one of his advisors on November 13th has said that he is willing to do a lockdown of the country. Now, he goes on to say that we can't go out, we can't go and keep making restrictions state by state because it's bad for business. And he goes on to say that what we're doing right now is not working, which is state by state restrictions and wearing masks and social distancing. That doesn't work. But he does believe that we could pay for a package. I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second, Tina. We could pay for a package right now to cover all the wages, lost wages of individual workers, for the losses to small companies, to mid-sized companies, or city, state, country governments. We could do all of that. And if we did all of that, we could lock down for 6 weeks. He wants to have us locked down for up to as much as 6 weeks, which is stupid because we can't pay for all that. Where does that money come from? I mean, quite simply, where does the money come from? From people working and businesses being open. If you close the businesses down, there is no money. Where is that money coming from? It has an impact. And if you're just going to borrow the money, well, that drives up interest rates. That means things become more expensive and the poor people are more at risk. No one likes to talk about this, but if you borrow the money, you have to pay it back. That means interest rates are going to go up. We're going to have things are going to cost more so that people can cover the cost of the money they had to borrow to give to you to live while you didn't work. And that means that things are going to cost more, which means poor people can't buy. If they can buy anything, they buy less of it because it's more expensive. You hurt more poor people than you are helping. It is more of a problem. And we've heard this from the CBO for years now when they talk about the raising the minimum wage artificially to $15 an hour. It hurts more people than it will wind up helping. This is a problem, but we know that Joe Biden has said that he's willing to do it, even though it can hurt people. And we know that one of his coronavirus advisor has said that we need to do this. Let me get to Tina's comment. So Tina says, it depends on which scientist you follow. For every shut everything down scientist or doctor, I can find the same number of open up, unmasked scientists and doctors with the same, if not better, credentials. That's true, Tina. We can find those, and you're right, except the people who are saying open up, continue to work, continue to live your life, including individuals at the CDC and the WHO, are not getting the press coverage. The news media do not agree with them. And that is not popular and beneficial to politics. So they're not getting heard. And no one's interested in doing that. They should, but they're not. And so they've already made the decision because they keep saying it's about the science, except the actions aren't about the science. The science at one point throughout this entire process, as an example, Dr. Fauci and others said, you don't need to wear a mask. Masks aren't helping anyone because no one's walking around with a surgical grade mask. Since you don't have a N95 surgical grade mask, the cloth that you're wearing over your face right now is absolutely meaningless. You know, a cloth like this one does absolutely nothing for you because it's not going to stop a microscopic virus. It's useless. It's just for show. Well, if that's the case, then you might as well not wear one. That was from Dr. Fauci and others who are all into this whole lockdown thing. And Governor Cuomo, upon hearing that, said, well, we're not going to do that. Well, that's what the science said. That's what the science does say. That is a scientific fact. The cloth masks people are wearing are useless and meaningless because the microscopic virus can go right through them. But Governor Cuomo decided, well, emotionally, he didn't like that. So he decided that that's not science suddenly, and that he's not going to find the science and do what he wants to do. So this is the problem. And so, Tina, you're correct. This is the major issue. It's all about power and whoever is saying something that will help the power. So I bring that up. And by the way, the advisor tried to bring it back. They tried to walk it back. According to ABC News, as soon as he said, we're going to shut everything down for 4 to 6 weeks, he had to take it back. People got scared because they suddenly realized, I don't want to be locked in my house by myself for another 4 to 6 weeks because you already told me when I did it the first time that was supposed to fix it in the first place. That was the answer to the problem. We're going to flatten the curve. 9 months later, we're still flattening the curve, apparently. And now we got to do it again? People were outraged about this. Except for the Democrats who said, yeah, this is a great idea. We get more power. You have less choices in your life. And so he tried to walk it back. And by the way, when they say walk it back, he didn't say he was wrong. He said he didn't tell Joe Biden. That's not walking it back. That's not changing your answer. He said, I didn't tell this to them. I mean, he goes, I've never discussed this with any of them. That's what he told ABC News. That was him walking it back. Dr. Michael Osterholm, an advisor to to Joe Biden, said in a phone interview late Thursday that he has not discussed with the incoming administration his earlier proposal to lock down the country for several weeks to try to curb the rising tide of coronavirus cases. He's not saying that he was wrong. He still advises that we should have our country shut down for 6 weeks, destroying our social fabric, the mental stability of tens of millions of people, crushing our economy. He wants to see this happen. He just says he didn't want Joe Biden to know about it. So let's think about that for a second. In 2021, we are highly likely to see, based on the data that we have out right now, that we're going to have another shutdown as Democrats try and decide whether or not they think that Pfizer and, who's the other one? Starts with an M. Some of the pharmaceutical companies, they've made vaccines. While they try and decide whether a vaccine is affected by the politics of President Trump, which is amazing to me, that whether or not you get that in 2021, this is crazy. This is crazy. I don't understand this, folks. Am I missing something here? Because we're being told very clearly that they want to push to get us locked in our homes for 4 to 6 weeks. And we know, because we've been through this now at least once in 2020, in March through June, we got to see what happens when you lock people down. We're still watching the business. Moderna, thank you. Moderna's the one. Just couldn't think of their name. We've seen what happens. And now we've got Pfizer and Moderna. They've got their vaccines, which, by the way, I don't care how effective they say they are. The flu virus, the flu vaccine is incredibly successful as well. And tens of millions of people get the flu anyway. You can have you can get the COVID-19 vaccine, and some percentage of people are going to get COVID-19 anyway. It's a virus. These things happen. Because if they could stop it, then we wouldn't have the flu either. So let's put some reality in here. Let's think of this realistically. And so they're trying to delay these drugs that will help some people. And they're saying that we need to go back into lockdowns that have caused domestic abuse and suicide to skyrocket, economics to be crushed, especially for the lowest income workers. And that's the best answer they have for us? Really? And then they want to tell us, well, we're walking it back. Well, he's correcting himself. They're correcting themselves because they didn't tell Joe Biden yet. It's on the news. Joe Biden knows. Whether he told Joe Biden directly or whether he watched ABC, CBS, or any of the other left-leaning news, which he does, or his staff watched any of those programs, and guess what? He knows about it. So it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if he was told directly or not. He knows about it. And he's already said he's willing to do it. That's a problem. These are the things that we're facing in 2021, folks. These are the problems that we are facing. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. Because this is all about, at the end of the day, every time I mention all these issues, you know what we're seeing? It's about power. It's not about whether or not you're going to get COVID-19. It's about whether or not you submit to the will of a small group of elites that happen to be progressives that are saying they control your life. You're not able to read certain books because a certain small group of elites don't like those books. You're not able to go out and worship because that small group of progressives don't like religion. Well, certain religions. They may like one religion, which happens to be one that subjugates its people. And I would say they probably don't even like that one. It's just useful for them. So they don't want you to celebrate your religions and celebrate and uplift yourself emotionally. Rather, they would say that if you have to be around other people, go out and riot. Because they're perfectly fine with rioting. They're perfectly fine with people going out and committing crimes. That they're okay with. In fact, they will absolve that. Look at the reform, criminal justice reform. You get arrested, you're put back out without bail. You're just back on the street to commit another crime. It's one of the reasons why Portland and Seattle have been in riots and destroying their cities since May. This is terrifying, folks. And this is what 2021 is. This is what our, we've heard the new normal. This is the new normal of 2021. Never-ending riots, a various diseases. I'm saying it's going to be more than just COVID-19 that intermittently shut down communities, if not entire states, on a random basis. Insane amounts of debt, people losing their homes, people losing apartments. These are the problems of 2021. These are the problems of the new normal, and you're not being told about it. And all of that's happening while people are trying to chip away. Matter of fact, not even chip away. They are now outright coming out and saying they're going to destroy your right to free speech, to have a religious belief, to defend yourself with the Second Amendment, to having a right of privacy. They are destroying it outright. They have said it. They have promised it. They said that this is their political goal. That is the new normal. Doesn't sound like the America that I grew up in. I'm 52. And if you tried to do any of those things in the 70s, in the 80s, I'd even go so far as in the 90s, and you try to suggest any of these things, and you would see riots, you would see that politician thrown out tarred and feather and run out of the, whatever the community may be. No one would have agreed with that. Today they do. It terrifies me. It terrifies me. But there is one more thing I wanted to get to, because 2021 is not just going to be about COVID-19. It's not just about books being essentially burned at universities like Binghamton University, or books being banned like at Penguin Books with Jordan Peterson. It's not just about silencing your ability to have free speech, including on the internet with Twitter and Google and YouTube, as they've said in congressional hearings where Senator Blumenthal, Senator Leahy have said that they're going to increase the amount of censorship, destroying the First Amendment. It's not even that. It's not just that we have governors like Governor Whitmer and Governor Newsom, Governor Cuomo, and mayors like Mayor Lightfoot, who are going around and who are denying people all of their amendments and unconstitutionally trying to micromanage your life. This is the new normal, but that's not it. There is more. There is more. And it's really, really bad because it's called Iran. We have more peace in the Middle East right now than perhaps at any time since President Carter signed the Palestinian peace deal with Egypt, which was before a lot of people who are on the internet now, before they were ever born, by decades. But under President Jimmy Carter, and I give him credit for this, under President Jimmy Carter, he signed a peace deal between Israel and Egypt, one of the biggest announcements of peace, massive impact around the world, and helped to somewhat stabilize the Middle East at that time, which is one of the reasons why Iran then decided to fall under the religious control of the Ayatollah and decided to kill America. They wanted to destroy America. So under President Trump, bringing it back up to the present day, well, there was, for people who forgot, back in 2015, we signed the Iranian nuclear peace deal with Iran, which, as I reported back on at Voss Political Commentary, you can see this for yourself. Like all of the things we've discussed in the description on YouTube, you will find the links for everything we're talking about here. It was back on July 14th, 2016. I was talking about, actually it was January of 2016, that then Secretary Kerry admitted that the Iran nuclear deal paid for global terror. He said, and I quote, "I think that some of it, meaning the money, will end up in the hands of the IRCG, the Iranian Republican Guard, or other entities, some of which are labeled as terrorists. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and also Hezbollah are those terrorist organizations." And they received, or Iran received, 150 billion from America as part of the Iran nuclear deal. Now, obviously, Iran found that to be a great idea. They loved it. In fact, they're so happy to see that Joe Biden got in because they loved that deal so much that President Trump got rid of and got America out of. Iran's president on November 8th was one of the first international leaders to say that Biden is president and he's looking for him to get back into that nuclear deal. One of the first nations to state that Joe Biden was president-elect of the United States, and he was congratulatory and wanted Biden to start working on international politics, a subject that was totally avoided for the public. The last debate was supposed to be between President Trump and Joe Biden. We're supposed to be on international policy. They skipped that. A massive and important issue. They didn't talk about that. The American public throughout the 2020 election heard nothing about international politics. And you have to wonder why. Perhaps because the Iranian nuclear deal is a big part of that problem. And it's part of that problem because we know for a fact that it was on the, where is it? I want to make sure I get it right. A gentleman who is by the name of Zarai, Dr. Zarai, who is one of the leaders of foreign policy. He's one of the foreign policy advisors to the religious leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, who's against President Trump. He's against America and is in favor. He believes that Iran should work together with China and Russia, Pakistan, and Turkey to create a coalition in the Middle East against America and Israel. These are his words, and he called for that in 2018. That individual is currently one of the individuals who is calling for the death of innocent civilians. As reported by Politico, he's gone online and he has said that he wants to see that not only are facilities destroyed by Iran, but he wants to see heavy human casualties affecting the city of Haifa in Israel. This is what we're dealing with. This is international politics. Now, let me put this into context a little bit. The Iranian nuclear deal in 2015 went through 2016, went through Iran, led by the Ayatollah of Iran, on the same day that John Kerry was saying the nuclear deal was signed, was leading the Iranian people in screaming death to America. We gave them $150 billion at that same time. We flew it over in a plane and gave them cash. Cash. $100 billion in cash. Flew it right to them as they signed the deal, as they promised to kill America. Because that somehow increased more peace in the world. Even though it funded global terror, it increased peace in the world somehow. I don't understand the logic of it here. If you understand the logic, let me know, because I don't get it. Because these are facts. There is no impression here. It's not my political belief coming out. This is not my interpretation. These are facts. This happened. President Trump gets elected and he takes America out of the deal because it's a bad deal. Because Iran still gets to make missiles. They were a year away from being able to make a nuclear bomb. What they didn't have was the ability to make missiles to get that bomb from Iran to the United States. That's what they needed to work on. The Iranian nuclear deal lets them make those missiles legally. They legally could make as many missiles as they needed to figure out how to get a missile from Iran to the United States. And they had $150 billion plus the release of all of the economic sanctions against Iran for being a terrorist nation and a supporter of global terrorism, wipes all of those out so that they could then actually have enough money and the resources to figure out how to make a missile to take a nuclear bomb from Iran to the United States. Trump said no. He didn't like that deal and said, we're not going to work on that. We're not going to be part of that. We're not going to help you pay for global terror. This is also a fact, not an impression. This is not a misunderstanding. We then go to today where we see not only did Joe Biden get in and Iran said, this is fantastic, but we saw that Israel has gone out and killed a scientist who is responsible for one of the scientists responsible for the nuclear program in Iran, which under the nuclear deal, we could see Iran has been working on that. According to Israel, Iran has continued to work on building a nuclear bomb, even though they had the nuclear Iran deal, which, guess what? No one's surprised by. Iran not living up to its promises. What a shocking thing. It's something they are known for doing. So that they've been making a secret bomb, and so Israel's trying to slow that down. And Israel is against the nuclear deal that allows bombs, missiles to be made. Iran heard, as a reaction to their scientists being killed, now has their foreign policy leader the man who advises their leader, the Ayatollah, who has promised to kill America, has promised to kill Iran. That includes all the progressives. That includes the socialists. Iran doesn't care about your political preference. Iran wants to kill everyone in America. He has promised, he has said it publicly over and over and over again, including just a couple days ago, they have promised to kill all of America. It doesn't matter your political preference. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. You can be black, Hispanic, Chinese. You can be an American from Iran descent, and they will kill you because you are an American, because you live under a constitution, because you are not bowing down to the Ayatollah of Iran. They will kill you. That is a fact. Again, no interpretation here. This is what they have said. They have been very, very clear about this. And now they are suggesting that they want to go into the city of Haifa in Israel and kill heavy human casualties, to cause heavy human casualties. This isn't collateral damage from a drone bomb from President Obama, which there were a lot of, which is human casualties. It means dead people. There were a lot of dead people from drone strikes by Obama around the world. We're not talking about just blowing up a wedding party because some terrorist was there. We're talking about Iran is being told by its one of its foreign policy advisors to go out and to kill heavy, meaning thousands, if not more, of people in the city of Haifa. Joe Biden has said nothing. This is probably, and I believe this will be one of the biggest problems of 2021. It's not going to be COVID-19. It's not the books that we can't read. It's almost as big as the unconstitutional actions and restrictions that are affecting the people of America. But internationally, I think this is the biggest problem. This will affect everyone. The peace deals, the 3 separate peace deals that have been negotiated by President Trump just this year, 3 that have increased the amount of peace in the Middle East since Carter. That's all going to go away because the greatest force of global terror in the world, Iran, is looking to try and attack Israel and kill its people en masse because they want to make a nuclear bomb and they want to get that bomb to reach America with a missile. And Joe Biden is helping to pay for it with your taxes. That's the biggest problem of 2021. I'd love to hear from someone on the left that thinks I'm wrong. If they think that I have misunderstood the news and put this together improperly. These are the facts, and I'm putting them together, and I'm telling you, I believe that that's going to be the biggest problem of 2021, especially if we have a Joe Biden as president or Kamala Harris as president. Folks, I don't know. And again, you can comment on YouTube, on Facebook, if Facebook's allowing me to be seen. It looks like it is again. On Twitter, you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. Tell me if you think I'm wrong here, because I don't see it. And I want us to really understand this. And I want to say it one more time, because I don't know if it's clear for people that we are looking at Joe Biden, his policy, his efforts helped to pay to create global terror. That is a fact. President Obama and Joe Biden paid the leader of global terror in the world and helped to increase the amount of deaths in the world under global terror. They paid Iran for the ability to get a bomb from Iran to America. These are facts. These are consequences of the Iranian nuclear deal. I understand the main news media, unsurprisingly, the major news media does not want to tell the American people these facts. These are facts. These are direct consequences of the, matter of fact, this is the agreement and then its consequences. These are facts. We know this is true. There is no dispute about that. So I can understand why Iran is very excited about Joe Biden being president, because they're able to do things that no other president would ever allow them to do. President Trump, nor any other president I can think of, is about to give them money for the promise of peace. That's just not going to happen. No one believes them because they are terrorists and they lead in global terror. So I don't believe when a terrorist tells me, "Oh, I'm really peaceful today," I don't believe you. I don't have a reason to believe them. Iran is sending people out into Israel and other parts of the world, France, Germany, England, to blow themselves up. They are paying for people to learn and to be able to go out and blow themselves up and kill women and children. You can understand if I don't believe when they say, "No, we're going to stop that." We still believe it. We still believe in this. We still believe that you need to die. This is what Iran is saying. This is what the Ayatollah of Iran has said and what his government is doing. They believe in killing America. They believe in killing every single person. They would kill Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as fast as they would kill me. They don't care what our political beliefs are. They care that we exist because we are Americans and they would want to kill us. They don't care. And they have said that repeatedly. They said that under Obama. They said that to Biden and to Kerry. And they said that to the world. So if they say that we're going to be peaceful, I don't necessarily believe them. I think that's a smart way to look at it, to not trust them on that. I think it's a smart thing not to give them hundreds of billions of dollars and to remove all of the economic pressure on them so that they are free and clear to make missiles, to take bombs from their country to our country or anywhere else in the world. Because if they can have a bomb, a missile, come from Iran and hit America, they can hit Canada, they can hit Peru, they can hit Germany, they can hit England, they can hit anywhere in the world. But they specifically said they want to kill America. And they're going back to, and they're looking forward to Joe Biden, who took away their economic pressure, who gave them money, and allowed them the freedom to make that bomb, that missile that can bring the bomb over, and allows them to work on the nuclear plan to make a nuclear bomb. As opposed to President Trump, where they want to say, "Oh, you know what? We're going to have, we have more economic pressure, so we can't develop all that." Yeah, this is the number one problem of 2021. It really is. Hey, Jason. I see Jason from Bing, another one of our fans, which we appreciate and we love each and every one of you. We really do. Jason from Bing mentions, "What's your thoughts on election fraud?" It's widespread. I mean, what else is there to think? It is a fact that election fraud happens. Always has been. More so this year than any other year. It is undeniable. I know Democrats like to say, well, there is no election fraud. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. There always was, to some degree. There's always some degree of it. But realistically, what we're seeing this year is on a scale unimagined ever before. We have seen more election fraud happen than ever before. We've seen that where people are suddenly... How many times have we seen, how many thousands of votes in Georgia were for President Trump that were on a flash drive and then suddenly they got found only because because the Trump administration asked for a recount. Not the Trump administration, the Trump campaign said, let's recount. Let's look at these votes because something looks wrong. There looks like there was election interference. And by the way, people are interchangeably, the news media is using election interference instead of the word election fraud. Partially because of the legalities, partially because it sounds better and it confuses more people and it doesn't sound as bad as fraud. So they say interference instead. But if you take away someone, and it's interference and it's a violation of law, to not count votes that were cast. It's also illegal to count votes of dead people, which we have done in the United States. Matter of fact, it was in the election. Matter of fact, I'll give you a great example, Jason. It was in the Broome County, the New York 22nd race, the third or fourth most important congressional race in the nation in 2020. A vote where we know the difference in the number of votes is 13. And I know from speaking to election campaigns on this race, I know that there are 13, the difference between Anthony Brindisi, who I know, and Claudia Tenney, who I also know, is 13 votes. 13 votes. And we know at least 3 of those votes were by people who were dead. And they were counted. Take off those 3 votes, does that make it 10? Not really sure. It's unclear. But we knew that they were dead and their votes were counted anyway. And we have elections, local elections mostly, where we see it incredibly tight. And everywhere that you've seen the election fraud that has been on a presidential level is followed up by it at the local level. One of the races in Michigan, it was in Michigan where they found, the voting, 6,000 votes went from President Trump because of the Dominion voting systems. Their voting machine took 6,000 votes from President Trump and gave them to Biden. We know this happened. We know this is a fact. We know it's happened in more than just in that one state, in one county. We know this has happened repeatedly, even though there has not been a mass investigation of every Dominion voting system machine to check the count in every single one of those states, all 28 states where it's been used, which would be logical. If you see that this is a problem that has happened and it has happened repeatedly, as we know for a fact, then there should be an investigation of every single one of those machines, everywhere that they exist in the nation. That hasn't happened. But not only did that 6,000 votes change the vote tally for President Trump versus Joe Biden, it also switched it at the lower levels so that a Republican who conceded his race, a local race, actually was the winner because the votes were switched on every race. So they were taking it away from Republicans and giving it to Democrats from the presidential all the way down. Is that affecting what's going on right now in the Tenney race? Did Anthony Brindisi get votes that belong to Tenney? Because the Dominion voting software system, as I understand, is used by New York State and we've seen that system gave votes from the president and other Republicans to the Democrats. Maybe. I'm not saying that did happen because I don't know, because we're not doing an investigation on that. And we should be. So yeah, I think there's a lot of fraud. I think there's a lot of election interference from, and I've said this a couple of weeks ago, coming from, YouTube, Twitter, Google. They're manipulating people massively. I think it's very real. And it's a big problem. It's a big problem. But I thank you for the question. I'm glad that you asked that. All right, folks. So we got about 5 minutes left in the show. And I thank you all for being with us. And I love hearing your comments, your questions, your thoughts. And let me say again, my phone line is open. And it is always possible whenever we do this live every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Democrats, progressives, Antifa, you guys are always welcome to call in. I'll take your questions. We'll have this conversation. I'd love to hear answers to some of the things I've asked, or how you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Because so far, I have yet to hear them say that they disagree with my conclusions. Jason from Bing goes on to say, Brindisi had 4,000 more votes than Biden and Tenney 6,000 less than Trump. And Broom. Yeah. It does. That's another problem with the election where when you start looking at some of the numbers, this was supposed to be some kind of blue wave. Every single poll got it all wrong. Absolutely. Every poll got it wrong. There was supposed to be a blue wave, didn't exist. We were supposed to see Democrats take over the House. They've actually lost 11 seats. We were supposed to see the Senate go completely blue. And it looks like, depending on Georgia, to get a final answer on 2 races, but it looks like the Republicans have held control of the Senate. Republicans at local levels across the nation have had a massive increase in Republicans elected to state offices. This is a complete fiasco. Democrats literally lost everything, essentially, other than potentially the presidency. That doesn't sound like a blue wave. It doesn't even sound right. It doesn't make sense. People were voting just for the president and voted for nothing else. They didn't make any other vote. You know what? When people have no idea what they're going to vote for, they usually vote straight down the line. So if I'm a Democrat, I vote straight down the line blue. If I'm a Republican, I vote straight down the line red. If I'm a Libertarian, I vote straight down the line Libertarian. People do not tend to just vote for the president and that's it. I'm not voting for anyone else. Really? You're not voting for anyone else in your neighborhood, in your county, in your city, the people that you actually know, because you don't know President Trump, you don't know Joe Biden, and you're going to vote for one of them, but you're not going to vote for the guy who lives down the block from you? You're not going to vote for your political party? That doesn't make sense. That's not what we normally see. That is highly uncommon. Oh, the trend, and Jason goes on to mention that the trend of Brindisi having more votes than Biden and his opponent by thousands did not match the rest of the country. I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised that Oneida County has some massive numbers of issues. Like I said, it needs to be investigated. There is a problem here. We know dead people have voted. And not just the 3 that I pointed out there, but many more. We know dead people have voted in the 2020 election in droves. We know that there have been software issues with the counting of the votes in droves. We know that there have been irregularities where suddenly people stop counting, never happened before, and then they restart counting without telling anyone when they're starting to count again, never happened before, with thousands of votes suddenly appearing out of nowhere, which has never happened before, or at least not on that scale before, where we've seen things that we have never seen before, and we have seen things in greater numbers than we have ever seen before. There are problems. You know, I know 2,000 people in Broome County only voted for president. It doesn't make sense. Now, Broome County is a population of 190,000 people. Not that 190,000 people voted. it's enough. That's enough to change elections. There is a problem. Hey, Agent Black from across the pond is back with us. Good to see you, Agent Black. I've seen forensic analysis of the votes. It's provable. The server farms was raided in Germany. Trump team has all the evidence. I've heard of that. I have heard about that there is an analysis that there are servers that show that there was manipulation of the vote. I'm not doubting that. I've seen that conversation. I have not seen that evidence. And I try, for the most part, to make my conclusions and my commentary based on facts. That's why I show you guys, here's my links, here's what I've seen, here's the facts that are available so we can get an understanding. So I can't say that, Agent Black, I can't say that that is a fact, and I'm not commenting on it because I can't independently verify it. But Tony Figuccio says, Broom was red on election night. Most of the nation, on election night, pretty much the entire nation was red. And then we had the mail-in ballots, which are highly questionable state by state, with a lot of problems about how they were counted. You know, they took ballots out that were supposed to be separated and they mixed it all together. So one of the problems is you found out that an illegal alien voted, like in New York State or Arizona, and illegal aliens were voting. And you found out that illegal alien voted. So you have to take away that vote, except you mix that ballot in with all the other ballots. Now, which vote do you take away? Doesn't matter who they voted for, even though it's really interesting to notice that in all the voter election fraud, I haven't heard a single case, and I would love to, if anyone knows of this, please let me know. There hasn't been a single case of election fraud in favor of Republicans. I'm not aware of any Republican that's gone out there and there was voter fraud to help. I can point to lots of cases before the election where we had, like on Project Veritas, was able to verify and show us there was a woman walking around, as one example, a woman walking around who was collecting votes for Democrats, claiming she was a Republican, having people to sign mail-in ballots that she was taking by hand to give in after she had manipulated the people to vote for a Democrat instead of a Republican. I can tell you that happened. I can tell you that there was illegal vote harvesting in Michigan. Again, Project Veritas proved it. It is a fact. Hundreds of ballots that they were getting paid per vote. We know that happened. We know the Dominion voting systems is screwed, that doesn't work, that it was manipulating votes. I have yet to hear of a single Republican that did anything. So that should make people concerned and make them wonder what's going on. At the end of the day, I have to say, even if President Trump were to lose, what we're not going to see is, we're not going to see, like Jazz brought up, there aren't going to be conservative riots. That's not going to happen. Conservatives don't do that. There aren't going to be lists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's list of Trump supporters, like the Trump Accountability Project. You're not going to see these attacks based on political beliefs from the right, even if President Trump loses, if it's a legitimate election, if that's what people actually voted on and what they believe. But our nation can't trust anything if we can't trust our elections. We will never come together as a nation. We will only separate and divide more and become more politically divided and more antagonistic and extremist if we can't trust our elections. And I know that's the case because we've seen it around the world. Look at Africa. Pick a nation. It doesn't matter which one. And look at their elections and look at the violence that happens with that and how that continues to have more problems that tears down those nations because they don't trust their elections. Look at the Middle East. Look at South America. This is what we see. Look at the socialist nations. If you don't trust your elections, you can't trust your neighbor. That means, how do I make a negotiation on, I don't know, taxes? How do I debate taxes and try and make a compromise on either lowering or raising taxes if I can't trust the person on the other side to live up to their end of the deal? Which is what our government's there for. It is there to make a compromise, to work on this. You come in with your ideas, your values. These are the things I can't bend on. Here are the things that I can bend on. Oops, lost one of my cameras. Hang on. And from there, and oops, help me here. There we go. And you make the deal on, here's what we can agree on. Here's the things we can't agree on. And we do our very best. But if you can't trust someone, what's the point? Mary mentions, so right, Michael, never thought I'd see this in North America. I would never have imagined this. I mean, maybe in Mexico, yeah. But not in America, not in the things I've talked about today in Canada, in the United States. This never would have been something. You could have asked me 10 years ago, I would never have seen this happening. I wouldn't believe it. The scary part is, where do we go after that? Agent Black mentions he'll send me some information in this coming week, and I look forward to that. By the way, folks, if you are we love to hear your ideas. If there's something throughout the week that you want us to know about, you can always reach out to us again through the Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and let us know. Hey, here's something to look into. Try and find out more about it. Can't guarantee that we're always going to follow up whatever it is you're sending to us, or that we'll follow it up in that time frame. But we try. We do try. And again, Sundays are about what you want to talk about. I may bring up some ideas to start off, but it's always about what you guys want to talk about and the details that we know about and what I've been following. And I think that's important because we don't get that. And we absolutely need more long-form political commentary in this nation. It is a problem when we're not getting enough information. As these problems for 2021, we need to start working on all of this right now. Not reacting to it in 2021, but fixing it now. Let's fix our elections, not by destroying the election system, not by changing it, just making sure that we don't have the fraud and the election interference, and that all of these issues, that we can answer them and say, this isn't going to happen again. You're not going to just stop counting in the middle of a count. You're not going to start counting without telling people that you're starting to count. We're not going to use a system. We're going to make sure all of the electronic systems for vote counting, that they're up to date before we let them have a vote taken on them. How about those for simple things? We're not going to allow dead people to vote if we can stop it. And we can. How about those are simple things that we can have in 2021. You don't need to change whether or not people vote in person. You just don't need to accept the votes of dead people and allow someone to manipulate the votes once they are cast and give them away to people who didn't get the vote. It's a pretty simple thing, folks. We don't need to make deals and fund global terrorism like we are with Iran, like we've done in the past with Iran. We don't need to do that again, as they're promising to purposefully kill innocent civilians in the thousands and promise to kill America. It doesn't make sense. Let's not make it easier for them to make a ballistic missile that can reach America and kill American citizens because they're saying death to America. Hey, do you want to get rid of those economic sanctions? It's a lot harder for them to build a ballistic missile with sanctions than without them. And them saying, well, we're really about peace doesn't make me feel safe. These are simple things for 2021. How about COVID? Instead of trying to lock us in our homes, maybe let's try herd immunity, because we did the lockdown and it didn't work. Why are we doing it again? Open up the nation. Stop killing our businesses. Stop leading to killing ourselves, suicide and domestic abuse and drug abuse, because people are solitary, they're prisoners in their homes in solitary confinement. Let's get rid of that idea. We've already done it. It didn't work. It's not healthy. Let's try something else. Just maybe. Just maybe. Let's stop with the fear mongering. It's not helping people. Let's stop trying to restrict books. Let people write what they want to write. People can read the book they want to read. Don't try and stop them. I don't know. I think these are simple things. Maybe our politicians should follow the Constitution, not try and find ways to grab more power or directly violate the very Constitution that made our nation the leader in the world. I don't know. These things seem simple to me. This is what I think is going to happen in 2021. These are essentially our predictions of leading issues in the nation, from the local to the international. Hopefully, the rest of the major news media will follow up on this. I don't think so. But no matter what, I want to thank you. You've been here with me for 2 hours and 11 minutes. I appreciate it. Please, if you can, if you like the show, share it, like it, because Twitter, Google, Facebook won't. Please subscribe. We're almost at 500 subscribers. You guys, I'd like to finish the year with 500 subscribers. Please, if you enjoy the program, subscribe. And please remember, I'm not saying that you agree with me. I said to you like it. There's a difference. But other than that, folks, I want to wish you the very best. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We're here. We're going to be here next week as well. Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Look for some of our posts in between now and then. And I want to wish you the very, very best.